This morning's scripture is from Matthew chapter 5. Jesus is speaking. You've heard the commandment, no committing adultery. But I tell you that those who look lustfully at others have already committed adultery with them in their hearts. If your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and throw it away. It's better to lose part of your body than to have it all cast into Gehenna. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. Again, it's better to lose part of your body than to have it all cast into Gehenna. Ancient words for our present day consideration.
Wait, hear me out. People of Rome, I come now to tough audience, tough crowd. It's a strange passage. I think it's helpful, those of us who were propagandized by traditional Christianity, when we get to verses like this, to realize this is a mystical text. He's going through in this section, he's talking about the 10 commandments. This particular one, don't commit adultery. And he's saying the problem starts way before that, long before the physical rules. So he's, in a sense, dismantling religion as people knew it to give them a deeper foundation for living. That's what this is really about. I hope that'll be clear in a bit. First of all, the word Gehenna is a word, Greek word for one of the words that was used for hell. It was kind of a junkyard outside of town, and they'd burn the trash so the fire was always going, and there was just kind of an image that was used. I personally do not believe that hell is a place or heaven is a place. I don't believe that Jesus was talking literally here. I think he's talking about a state of mind, in which case we all know what he's talking about. When Thomas is asking questions and he's saying, I'm going to this other place and you know the way, and Thomas says, how the heck could I know the way? Which would be a great question, because if he's talking about some place up in the clouds, then Thomas would know the way. But if he's talking about a state of mind, we've all experienced a little of heaven, a little of hell. I believe we learn more about Jesus from studying Buddha, from studying Gnostic texts like the Gospel of Thomas. They get away from the literal understanding and start with the place that our problems start inside. We have external problems too, but what keeps us from being able to deal with that is often internal. Wounds are things that we've been taught that don't hold up to the real world. It's very debilitating when you've been told in Sunday school that ideas are true because you want them to be true, right? And that if you wish really hard, your dreams will become a reality in your lifetime. That was not the world that Jesus lived in. Jesus lived in a world where everything had caved in. We're not quite there yet, but like 30 days, I think. And it may or may not be as bad as some of us expect, but either way, this is a time to really think about the foundation of our lives. That's what the Sermon on the Mount is talking about. What is it that you base your peace of mind on? None of us chose this, but since we're here, why not learn the wisdom, the joy, and the peace that's right here by going deeper, becoming more profound. I don't believe in hell. I don't think, when you think about hell much, I mean, in addition to being incredibly unfair and monstrous, it just doesn't make sense that God wants to punish sinners, so God puts Satan in charge. Satan's not going to punish you if you're bad. Satan's going to like you if you're bad. Major design flaw. And most of us recognize that the body dies. If something goes on, it's a spirit. So how do you punish a spirit? How do you torture a spirit? It's got to be psychological. That's being talked about here. So I think instead of trying to understand like the monstrosity of the image, think of Buddha giving this stunning, shocking image, trying to get you to let go of your old assumptions. Jesus is trying to untether people from literal understanding of their religion to coming into the place they are in their time in history and their life. So if we are entering into the stormy times, these are the passages that help us think through what our life's foundation is. What is it that will hold up in either case? I don't think Jesus was saying desire is bad at all. But in that exaggerated statement, what it's saying is sometimes desire can throw us off balance and cost us our inner peace. We can arrange everything in the world, but if our problems are coming from a misunderstanding inside, they're not going to go away. We're going to keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. So what Jesus is saying is not that you should never desire, but I think he's saying when things cave in on you, look at what you've desired. Look at what's made you angry. See if there's not a relationship there. And the important thing is whatever it is that has thrown you off balance, to realize that you can find something deeper. And that deeper place is home. It can hold up to any storm. If you value it more than you value the externals. The first thing I get from the passage, I think from the passage, or I project onto the passage, who knows which that is. Jesus talks a lot about the eye. And I think the reason he does this is he's really talking about how we perceive the world. When we experience emotions, and they're natural, they're wonderful, they're a gift. Life would not be worth living without desire. But look what desire does to your perception. Look what anger does to your perception. Become aware of your awareness. That's what a Buddha or Jesus is trying to help us do. We usually leave that step out, and we're like ping pong balls blowing in a storm. What does desire do to your perception? Think about that in your own life. One of the things it can do is turn other people into objects. In the ancient world, well, I was going to say in the ancient world, women were used. I forgot I live in a country where women are considered community breeding stock. So Jesus is talking to people trying to help them go deeper within themselves, to find something that doesn't belong to the storm, that doesn't belong to other people's misunderstandings of them. Have you ever wanted somebody in your life so bad that you didn't really care whether they wanted you or not? Desire can do that, can turn people into objects. We can love people as though they were objects, as though they were furniture in our drama. I think it happens a lot. Where then you think, well, I'll change him. After I get the handle mounted, I'll change him, or I'll just be stronger and then she'll understand. I think the first thing that Jesus is teaching us is as good as desire is, love is better. What starts as desire can grow into love, but you have to love the other person as other. To love a part of the person that has nothing to do with your life. You get nothing out of them. Parents love their children, but the good parents love their children like that. You don't hold a baby and say, well, I'm giving, and you just take. You may feel, it's about me. What's wrong with you? You're supposed to be the decoration of my life that put everything. At its best, parental love loves the child as wholly other, and that's torture. As the child grows up, gets better, that can be torture. But that's what Jesus is talking about by agape love. Loving so much that you don't need the other person to fully understand you before you love them. You can see where the cross would apply to that. It can hurt. It can feel like a death wound almost. To love someone so much who doesn't love you back. But there's an exquisite feast in it. Where cake tastes better in their mouth than in your mouth. Where them having, fun playing soccer, you sit and watch and enjoy it. It's crazy. It is possible to love other people like that. It starts with desire, but you deepen it until you see the subject, not the object, but the subject that's there. And you love it as other, not as a part of your life, not as something useful to you, but as other. In Hinduism, there's a wonderful saying, people understand it differently, but it says, in life you have to choose between being the sugar and tasting the sugar. I think it goes the other way around, tasting the sugar or being the sugar. I think Jesus is talking about a love that's so profound that becomes who you are. And it's not saying that you don't need people to love you back, that you don't want them to, that you don't accept that when the time comes when you can do that. But when those lesser forms of love shut down on you, when you don't have them available, there is still an exquisite joy possible if you go more fully into the love. Do you remember that saying in I think I've got it here, the prayer of St. Francis? A lot of the ancients talked about a joy they called beatific, where nothing outside can take it away. And these are people that were sometimes tortured, that were sometimes imprisoned. The second verse of his famous, make me an instrument of your peace, it says, grant that I might so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, and in pardoning we are pardoned. It is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Now, when things are good, who cares about this, right? But what if nothing else is working? What if everything you were taught as a child that would make you happy isn't available, or isn't available for somebody else you love and care about? If this administration goes the way some of us think it might, people like me will probably be fine. But that's not okay. I'm not going to rest in being a little higher up on the menu. Jesus called us to leave our comfort zone and lay our lives down for other people. That's probably never made sense to you, or it sounded gloomy. I think we're going to understand this stuff a whole lot better. It's the best of times, worst of times. What does it mean to be a human being? What is the peace of mind no one can take away? What is the value that goes beyond physical wealth and hoarding? These are what our current events call us to answer, and that's what Jesus is talking about in the Sermon on the Mount. Buddha had a very similar sermon called the Dhammapada, where he talks about how your thoughts can do you more damage than your worst enemy. Your thoughts can do you more good than your best friend. So when he talks about plucking out the eye, I think he's talking about how we're looking at the world. And to realize that we get stuck looking at the world in one way, and we objectify other people, and then feel such disappointment, such betrayal. There is a love that doesn't go off. There is a candle nobody else can blow out. It's that profound love that becomes the sugar and doesn't need to taste the sugar to be who it is. I think when Jesus called himself the bread of life, I think that's what he was talking about. So then the second thing, for me anyway, is I get tunnel vision with desire. I don't know how many guitars I have. If you don't know how many guitars you have too many. I've got way too many. But the weird thing is, I really want a Telecaster. I don't need a Telecaster. It's insane. But for some reason, when I get on YouTube and I see there's a Telecaster. That's that tunnel vision. I was visiting a family one time, and there's a child in a cradle, and they were spoiling the child rotten. He had like 50 toys. One of the toys fell out on the floor, and the child was beyond consolation, just crying. And I thought, that's the human condition, isn't it? Yeah. The word want both means to desire something, it also means to not have it. Remember that verse in Desperado where it says, seems to me some fine things have been laid on your table, but you only want the ones that you can't get. Desire can be like that, where we don't appreciate what we have, and we're always looking for something outside ourselves to give us that joy. That clutching is the problem, and we've all been made miserable by tying our happiness to a thing or a person or a job or an opinion. Jesus is saying, cut that hand off, cut that clutching off, and then see if the peace doesn't return. The last thing I want to point out that I see in the passage is the idea that I think Jesus called us to a simplicity. I think when times are good, you can get all the toys you want. But when things get bad, you need to know what makes you happy and what you need and what you don't need. I think it was Marianne Williamson, is that her name? Yeah. Williamson, who said, inner peace is not getting what you want, it's remembering who you are. Happiness is like a balance. In Sunday school, you were taught that hell represents fear, heaven represents hope, choose hope. What a Buddha or Jesus says is, don't jump on a teeter-totter. Make your foundation into reality. Don't let your hopes or your fears rob you of peace. In Hinduism, and I'm quoting a lot from Hinduism today for some reason, but there's a beautiful image that was very helpful for me where it talks about the mind in its original nature. It's like a peaceful lake. And there are two winds that blow across that lake that disturb it. One is the wind of fear, and the other is the wind of desire. In good times, you don't need this art, but when times are bad, you may need to choose the placid balance and find your happiness there. Bernard Shaw was a great playwright who knew human beings very well. So the two tragedies in human life are, one, not to get your heart's desire, and number two, to get it. Because sometimes your worst problems are the things you wanted more than anything else. I found in my own case that the times I was the most joyful, not that much was happening. I was at a lake, I was looking at the stars with a friend. I try to think of the happiest time of my life, try to go way, way back. And I kept seeing the picture of my family around the Christmas tree, all these presents on my lap, waiting until Dad gave the word, then you open the presents. And I realized I don't remember what were in any of those packages. Right? The bliss was in that moment. And I didn't need to get the things that I'd wanted so much and gone through the catalog and circled. I couldn't even remember what most of those were. But that sense of loving and being loved was a stable foundation that even the death of my parents couldn't shake. That peaceful moment is inside of me. So we see some very weird words today: cut off your eye, pluck out your eye, cut off your hand. But if love is speaking to us, what that's saying is realize that the treasure within you is so profound that you'd be better off taking your eye out if something makes you betray the peace that's within you. You'd be better off cutting your hand off if it tempts you to leave behind the peace of mind that's in there deeply right now. Pay attention in this turbulent time to what your emotions do to your perception. Become aware of your awareness, and that will open up places within you that will amaze you. Notice when you're getting tunnel vision. Go out, look at the stars, sit in the woods, feel the wholeness of things, and you realize that maybe you don't need a Telecaster so much, but maybe I'm just talking to myself. I'm sure you have your own version of that. And then finally to realize the jewel is always inside. We want external things. The external things express love. But true inner peace does not come from getting what we want. It comes from remembering who we are. Well, those are my thoughts on this passage. We'll take a moment to think about yours.